You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. As Roland Martin Unfiltered. By going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com, you can make this possible. All right, folks, did you know that there were some escaped slaves who were able to get away and flee to Jamaica? History you never learned about. Joining us right now from Atlanta is Dr. Samuel Livingston, Director of African American Studies at Morehouse College. Dr. Livingston, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Brother Roland, how you doing?
Doing great. So tell us about the Maroons.
Well, the first thing I'd like to tell you is that they didn't all escape to Jamaica. Some of them stayed right here, and they are a part of our African ancestors right here in the United States. In fact, I was so pleased to read the 1619 Project, spearheaded by Sister Hannah Jones and just an array of great Black minds. But 1619 is not the beginning of our history. The year 1526 is the beginning of our history, and it began actually with a group of Africans, 100 Africans who were brought to the United States of America late in the summer of 1526 by a Spaniard named Lucas Vasquez de Ayllón, and they essentially destroyed the settlement called the San Miguel de Guadape settlement, and they established the first permanent presence of Africans in the United States of what would become the United States of America. So we have the argument that, well, Virginia was the beginning of the United States of America, but you can't really argue that and say that South Carolina or Georgia, where the San Miguel settlement took place, wasn't actually a part of the U.S. also. So those technically would have become Maroons, Africans who killed their enslavers, and set up their own community, probably with Native Americans who would go on to live in South Carolina and South Carolina and Georgia in that region. So not all of them went to Jamaica.
And so, as you're unpacking this, I mean, obviously it's providing a different level of understanding and context in terms of this history. But I think it also, what people need to understand is that you didn't have people of African descent who were just so feeble. I mean, look, from the moment people of African descent hit this country, they were trying to seek freedom, which is why we call this segment Still Seeking Freedom. Freedom was, that was the piece. These folks were never, ever just fine, we're resigned to what's happened. It was a constant effort to be free.
Exactly. No, I can't agree with you more than on that. One of the things about the 1619 Project that I thought could have been brought out a little bit more, it's actually the Africans in Virginia who actually escaped and tried to set up their own societies. But there were scores of those societies. It could have been as many as between 50 to 100 of those different type of Maroon communities from Virginia all the way down into Louisiana and definitely into Florida and other areas as well. But no, you're absolutely right. Africans have never settled for enslavement or, with the institution of slavery itself being, that definitely was not something that our ancestors were happy with or satisfied with.
Greg Carr, I want to go to you. I mean, this is the reason why we're doing this segment is because, again, what I did not want to happen, I did not want for us to sit here and just commemorate this moment, have this event or a few events in Virginia, or have a publication or whatever. Is to say, no, use the next year or even beyond to really tell this narrative, to unpack this story, to show just these different elements of who we are and where we came from and how we arrived at this point.
Absolutely. And Roland, as you said, when you envision this and as you're unfolding it week after week, as the viewership continues to expand and folks tune in, not only are you showing the dimensions of African life in the modern world, including resistance, you're also linking it to our practice to this day. An independent, black-owned and controlled black news media outlet, which is now highlighting and showing the scholarship and the daily teaching practice of some of our finest scholars at black institutions. I mean, I've known Sam Livingston, my big brother, we've known each other for decades, and this is a brother who not only is a deep scholar in Maroonage and many other areas, he's teaching young people at the Atlanta University Center every day. So it's great to have the 1619 Project. Great for the New York Times to spend money and Robert Smith to pay and John Legend and others and send us all the magazines. But there are a lot of places where those magazines arrived at HBCU campuses where they were received by faculty who do this work every day. And so in doing this every week, what you're showing is our best minds are not only writing, not only researching, they are teaching. And our young people now are exposed, and add Sam Livingston to the list of people everybody should look up now and look at what this brother is doing.
Hey, well,
You know, Sam, Sam, I want to go to you on this because when we talk about, again, I keep saying history and his story. And that's what this really speaks to me, the difference here. I think we have to understand that we have to go beyond his story and utilize our platforms to tell our story. Greg often talks about it. That's what Ebony did. That's what Jet did. When you read the writings of Lerone Bennett and others, and the issue that I have right now with so-called black media is that we are, in essence, rewriting stories by white folks and then slapping a black byline on it. And I'm like, nah, that ain't it.
No, I agree with you. And shout out to big up my brother Greg right there. You know, I owe a lot of what I'm doing to his influence, as well as to Valethia Watkins, Mario Beatty, just a number of really good young scholars who are still doing this work. And thank you, Brother Roland, for providing this platform. One thing I want to say on that is that, you know, we have too many heroes and heroines, heroes and sheroes whose stories we haven't been telling. And there are so many other aspects of those stories that we need to tell. You know, so for every Frederick Douglass that you have, we need to also know the story of somebody like a Moses Dixon, who was a contemporary of Douglass, but a man who started a slave rebellion movement that probably never took place, but we know that he actually had a big impact on history. The only reason why we don't know this man is because essentially, you could say the scholarly powers that be or whatever don't necessarily really want the story out there. But there's so many other stories that we really need to tell, and that's just here in America, not to mention on the continent of Africa and in other parts of the diaspora.
Questions from Erica and Joseph before we end the segment.
I do have a question. So thank you, Dr. Livingston. Wanted to find out from you, as you're providing this information to those young folks out. My son is a man of Morehouse. So as you are providing that information to these young minds, what is the response to the information, which is essentially new information that they're receiving? What's the feedback that you're getting?
Oh, it's I would say overwhelmingly positive, and students are really inquisitive. What I see, and I'm so pleased to find this out, and I know Brother Dr. Card probably does this a lot better than I do, but actually getting students into like the research process, if you put out just a little feeler, you know, okay, I'm working on this project and we need somebody with Spanish skills. I literally said this in class today, and I was kicking myself because I didn't say it earlier, but the brothers just literally jumped to the opportunity. They were just very enthusiastic, and you see that type of thing every single day in terms of the black scholars at HBCUs, other locations too. But I got to shout out my folks at our HBCUs who are doing phenomenal work all across this country. So no, I agree. There's a response. Every now and then you will get a little bit of hesitance. You know, students will ask the question which they should ask. Well, where's the evidence for this? You say that there's a slave rebellion movement that was planned from 1846 until 1856, and that you had tens of thousands of brothers poised to set it off in the city of Atlanta. under this Knights of Liberty movement. Well, where's the evidence for it? So we do the research and we show students exactly where the argument is and where the evidence is, and then we let them take it from there and form their own positions and opinions. But it's up to us to put those stories out there and to tell those stories in the best way that we can, and to recruit our students and get them to become those storytellers too.
Yeah.
Well, one quick question.
Joseph.
One quick question that I had is the story of the Maroons kind of reminds me of the paradox, right? I mean, here in D.C. we have the African American Museum of History and Culture, right? One of the most popular Smithsonian museums ever created. I mean, there are waiting lists, they have time tickets. People can't get enough of that. And a lot of people who come visit are white people. And yet we still have so much of this history that's unknown, right? So much of the history when it comes to the surface, we're like, wow, we didn't know that. And that to me speaks to the fact that there really isn't a lot of teaching of this sort of thing in the general public, and by that I mean in school, in public schools. I mean, students are coming to college to you completely ignorant of this sort of history. What I'd like to know is there a movement or is there a way to filter down this teaching to grade schools and to high schools so that you don't have kids showing up at Morehouse or Howard or Bethune-Cookman who are completely ignorant of this sort of thing, and you do have a wider movement to understand the contributions and the history, the fuller history of African Americans in this hemisphere?
Definitely. I'm going to defer to my brother Greg on that, Dr. Carr, because he's done a phenomenal job of actually writing curriculum in ways that are transformed and that have transformed tens of thousands of students. So, Brother Greg.
Oh no, brother. Listen, I'm glad to hear this conversation because in part, you know, when you mentioned in reference to Erica, who's, I guess, now help me, when you say man of Morehouse, that means he there now.
Right.
That's exactly right. So Sam, you gotta make sure you gotta let.
Okay.
No,
Definitely. You gotta reach out to him and make sure that he gets on one of these projects.
No question. I mean, the work, certainly the K-12 work, Joe, that we've done, you know, in Philadelphia, many other places. We're building on the work, as we would say, Roland, of generations. I mean, Ebony Jr. People might forget that Johnson Publishing had a whole series of magazines, and it went to the schools. But by the time they get to us, and I'm thinking about it, Sam, because of course we spent 2 weeks in the Nile Valley together. You know, Dave Walrice and others, we were there. One of the things you were talking to us about was getting these young people involved in research, and the team. In fact, you were recruiting in Egypt. That is work that we've seen also done in elementary school, in middle school, and in high school. People like Kim Worthy, who taught for many years and teaches in this city. He was DC Teacher of the Year at the Howard University Middle School of Science and Mathematics, had her students doing genealogy research. So even asking a 7-year-old, go interview everybody in your family and come back and give us a family history report. And then we're going to teach you how to look up the records. By the time she gets to college, she will already have a family history and already be ready to go back past the boat to Africa and tie it all together. So we do have to do that. You know, get our young people involved very young, and it begins with the family.
Doc, final comment.
I'm sorry, brother.
Final comment from you.
Oh, man. Just the last thing I would say is the Maroons, a really important but overlooked part of our history. If you look at one of the most important set of laws that were passed in our history, 1705 Omnibus Slave Statute, there's a whole section in there that really just deals with the Maroons. And if you look at what's being done to the African population in the 18th century of Virginia, you see the argument laid out very well in the 1619 Project, that it touches every single other area of Black lives today. So the final word for me would be know the Maroons, know yourselves, and claim and support Black Maroon spaces today, Black educational spaces, Black media spaces. Shout out to you, Brother Roland. Really appreciate it. And also all of my folks at HBCUs. Support HBCUs. Make a donation. Support HBCUs as soon as you can.
All right, Dr. Samuel Livingston, of course, with Director of African American Studies at Morehouse College. We appreciate it, man. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
All right, folks, back to that Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment. All right, folks, you heard me talk a lot about marijuanastock.org. Why? Because I want to keep you informed of investment opportunities that make sense. We've all watched the growth of the cannabis industry. A recent report by New Frontier Data estimates the global cannabis market at more than $340 billion. Now, we know that marijuana legalization is sweeping the country state by state. We also know that marijuana has a good cousin, the hemp plant, with a much higher concentration of CBD. That means hemp gives you all the medical benefits of marijuana without getting you high. Until recently, hemp farming was practically legal in the U.S., but it was, of course, made legal by the 2018 Farm Bill. Now, the folks at 420 Real Estate are giving our folks a great opportunity. And of course, their business model is simple. They buy land that supports hemp CBD grow operations and lease it to licensed, high-paying tenants. That's right, they are hemp CBD landlords. And so what they have done for our Roland Martin Unfiltered family is allow you to make a minimum investment of $200. Originally, the minimum was $500, but now you can invest in this crowdfunding campaign for as little as $200 up to $10,000. All you got to do is go to marijuanastock.org. That's marijuanastock.org to get in the game and to get in the game now. Now back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered video.